This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome to NC Spin. This week's show promises to be special as we welcome State Treasurer Dale Folwell, along with our regular panelist, John Hood, who's a syndicated columnist and author and is celebrating a very special birthday, I might add, and Chris Fitzsimon, director of NC Policy Watch. Welcome, Treasurer Folwell. You took office in January after a career as a CPA, a legislator, and head of the state's Employment Security Commission. Your office touches just about every life in our state, and we specifically want to ask you about state investments, the teachers and state employees' retirement system, the state health plan, and how your other duties impact us. Let's get started. Our state constitution gives the treasurer the sole responsibility for investing state funds. We want to talk about whether this is the best way to invest almost $100 billion. For some years, we've had a target rate of 7.25% of a return on our investments, but during the recent election campaign, you pointed out we're falling short of that goal. Were these goals overly optimistic, and if so, what is a realistic return on investment?
Well, as you just mentioned, the State Treasurer's Office of North Carolina, we're in the check delivering business. Probably 1 out of every 10 adults in North Carolina receive a check from us in one form or the other.
Wow.
From the Unclaimed Property Division, the Pension Division, the State Health Plan, and also in some respects through the Local Government Commission. Specific to your question, the 7.25% is a rate of return that the state pension plan has been assuming to have earned, but it has not achieved that on average over the last 15 years. And the reason that's important to your viewers is that results in what we call an unfunded liability. And the unfunded liability is because the employees of North Carolina put money in the state pension plan. That money is matched and or even exceeded by whatever agency they work for.
Right.
But the way that it works so that they receive a pension benefit for the rest of their life is that it has to grow at 7.25%. It has not achieved that. As a matter of fact, in the last fiscal year, the $100 billion state pension plan earned less than 1%, 0.8%.
No.
Yes.
Wow.
And but for the last calendar year, it earned 6.3%. But on average, it's earned about 6% over the last 15 years. And I'm pleased to be here today to talk about these issues. And we always have an option to speak about these things.
Well, so what is a realistic return? What should we be basing our models on? Because I know that the benefit, as you say, is based on the state contribution, the employee contribution, and a rate of return. So in order to fulfill our promises, what should be a reasonable rate of return?
Well, anytime that you drop the rate of return, the fundedness of this plan, which when Harlan Bowles left office was 110% funded.
Yes.
It's now said that the plan is about 94% funded, but if you use a more realistic rate of return, the plan is only about 85% funded. That is better funded than most plans in the United States,
Right.
but the fact is, it still only has 86 cents on every dollar.
But you didn't answer my question. What is a realistic rate of return?
Well, I think a realistic rate of return is below 7%.
Okay.
And the reason it has not been lowered is that any time you would lower that rate of return, the fundedness of the plan goes down dramatically, and treasurers in the past have not been willing to do that.
Do you have the authority to set that rate?
I have the authority, like in so many other instances that you mentioned, through the board to set that rate. But I think the next 4 years is going to be about gradualism. I think that if we honestly look at the fact that we have not achieved this rate of return for the last 15 years, and there's a very small chance that we're going to achieve 7.25% over the next 15 years. I think to start gradually reducing that every year, little by little, is a more prudent way to manage the state pension plan.
Treasurer Folwell, on that point, you said that past treasurers or past policymakers haven't made the change because it would make the fundedness level of the pension plan go down. More specifically, I mean, I assume that would be a bad headline, but not necessarily a devastating event. It seems to me the bigger issue is the legislature would have to either put more money in, which would take away from other expenditures or things the legislature would want to do, or else the legislature would be held responsible for not funding the plan. So the real pressure here is that if you change the expected rate of return and therefore affect the liability, the unfunded liability number, that has dramatic consequences for the state budget and what lots of people want to see funded out of general revenue, right?
Exactly right. And Bill Gates said that very thing about 6 years ago. When Bill Gates, who often opines about public education, said one of the biggest threats to public education over the coming decades is how we account and fund for the health care and pension obligations of our public service workers. So you're exactly right. But the fact is that the rating agencies, because of new accounting standards that are coming into play, and we're delving into the AAA bond rating, the rating agencies understand and know that we have not achieved this rate of return over the last 15 years, and they know with these low interest rates that there's a very low probability of achieving it over the next 15 years. I think that it's important just to be honest with not only the rating agencies, but the people of North Carolina about the true fundedness of these plans.
Well, Treasurer Folwell, one of the things that has happened out of all of this is that in order to achieve some greater returns, we've given the Treasurer investment authority into what many consider to be riskier kinds of investments. This business of risk versus return and safety as a fiduciary for 800,000 people and for all of the citizens of the state of North Carolina, how much risk should we be taking? What kinds of investments should we be considering?
Well, if you look over the last 10 years, the state pension plan has dealt very strongly in what your viewers commonly hear about as an alternative investments.
Right.
Those alternative investments have not paid off for the benefit of North Carolinians. Not only that, is they come with it a high degree of illiquidity, so that if you put money with a money manager and it doesn't work out, your ability to extract yourself from that, it goes down dramatically.
It might be worthwhile to give an example of what the alternative investment is.
It could be a debt instrument, it could be a speculative hedge fund, it could be a fund of funds. But my goal over the next 4 years is to reduce the complexity of these pension investments and bring value to the participants and the taxpayers.
One quick question. I wondered how our rate of return compares to other states.
Well, over the last, I haven't seen this recently, but over the last 5 years, if you look at our investment returns, we're probably somewhere between 42nd and 45th out of 50 states.
Interesting.
But in addition to that, the fees that we've paid have gone, since Harlan Bowles left office, from $50 million. Last year, the State Treasurer's Office paid over $550 million worth of fees to Wall Street.
And that was one of the things that you campaigned on, is that you were going to reduce these fees. Tell us how you're going to go about doing it, and what do you expect to get down? What level do you expect to get down to in management fees?
Well, the promise I made, and it's interesting, Lynn Bonner asked the question of me a few weeks ago, what's it like when you say something for a whole year in a campaign and then you actually have the responsibility of governing? And really what's wrong with our country is that people do say things during the campaign and then they don't remember what they said while they're governing. And one of those promises that I made was that we were going to cut these fees by $100 million. So what I've been doing over the last 5 weeks on 14-minute intervals, I've been calling every single money manager that manages money for the state of North Carolina, and I ask them the basic questions that I think the people of North Carolina want me to ask them. Who are you? Where are you? How good are you? How are you performing relative to what you said you were going to do? And more importantly, how much are we paying you?
Another issue that came out during the course of the campaign was transparency, reporting not only to the state employees and to the legislature, but also to the public of North Carolina, how well the pension funds are performing. What's your plan to make sure that you are more, you said you were going to be more transparent. Tell us how you're going to do that.
Well, we've already been more transparent. I'm not signing any documents that have anything to do with didactic information. I'm once a month going to have an Ask Me Anything call for the members of the media. You know, your viewers know all too well, especially those in Western North Carolina. In some respects, you have viewers of this show who live closer to 5 other state capitals than they do their own.
North Carolina. Yeah.
So the media out there deserves to have the same amount of information regarding the public's purse, which is what the treasurer has responsibility for, as somebody in Raleigh.
I want to jump back. One of the things, John, you were talking about with John in terms of the impact on the state budget to reduce our projected how much we get in from our investments. When do you think that gradual lowering of that will begin? And does that mean that you'll take an active role in the state budget process and encouraging lawmakers maybe not to cut taxes as much and put some of that money aside?
I'll take an active role to make sure that, and it's what's really going on in our society, is so many times people just want to be affirmed about what they already know. They don't want to be informed. That's what's important about NC Spend. You're informing people, not just affirming what they already think. And they fully understand that the jeopardy that they placed North Carolina's AAA bond rating in by not, as we say in the military terms, the rating agencies want to know that we hear them, we understand what they're telling us, and we're actually doing something about it. So the role that I'm going to play is make them understand a couple of things, which they already do. By the way, this General Assembly has fully funded the pension plan, plus tens of millions of dollars extra every year for the last 5 years. So
assuming that it earned the rate of return that it was supposed to.
That's correct, and that's why they've been putting extra tens of millions of dollars in the plan.
Because it wasn't. I can't let this segment in, Treasurer Folwell, without asking you about this business of investment authority. I remember when I worked for Harlan Bowles, we acknowledged the fact that giving one person the sole authority to make these kinds of investment decisions was an awesome responsibility and not necessarily an appealing one to the office holder. But we researched other state pension funds and investment plans across the country, and we couldn't find one that was any better. What's your take on this business of the treasurer having the sole responsibility?
Well, I join every other state treasurer in thinking and advocating that sole fiduciary is a good thing for the participants of the plan and the taxpayers of North Carolina. But it's important to inform your viewers that whether it's the local government commission, the supplemental retirement board, the state health plan board, or the retirement board, teachers or the local government, that there is a board that I chair, but that board votes on these very important issues. So I do have sole fiduciary responsibilities.
But at the end of the day, it's your decision.
It's my decision, but there is a board in each one of these instances that help me make those decisions.
All right, we're going to be back and we're going to talk more about the retirement system. Have you signed up to receive our free weekly email newsletter, Spend Cycle? If not, you can do so on our website, ncspend.com. You'll also find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panelists, and my weekly column. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspend.com, NCSpend on Facebook, or on Twitter at NCSpend Tweets. As we say, after the break, we talk about retirement systems.
NC Spend will return after these messages.
The slogan on our family farm is growing the next generation. It means using innovative technology to conserve water and increase yields. It embodies our passion for providing food and fiber for our neighbors near and far. It represents our desire to take care of our employees, our land, and to leave a better place for our children. Farm life isn't easy, but it's a good life, and I love what I do.
North Carolina is a great state with great assets.
Among them are 180,000 state employees.
Our legislators are considering important decisions regarding working conditions,
health insurance,
retirement benefits,
and pay for state employees.
Scenic is the one voice at the table when those decisions are being considered.
Scenic is revitalized and refocused.
A stronger Scenic ensures a more effective voice.
Learn more at www.scenic.org.
We now return to NC Spend.
We return with our conversation with State Treasurer Dale Folwell. Dale, in managing the retirement system for approximately 800,000 current and state retired teachers and employees, you're responsible for making sure the program is sound. Funding for the retirement comes from the state, along with contributions for active employees, and you say they're underfunded. Explain why that's the case. As you said earlier, we're not receiving the investment returns we thought. But how short are we in order to fulfill those promises?
On the pension plan, if you use a more reasonable rate of return, we're somewhere between $10 and $14 billion
Unfunded.
underfunded in the pension plan. And of course, we'll talk about in a moment the state health plan, which is $32 billion underfunded.
Wow. So far as it goes, in addition to the investment side of this, there's also the administrative side of this. It's a pretty big job trying to administer and keep up with 800,000 records as far as current and retired teachers and state employees. How are we doing there?
Well, we have some fantastic employees at the Office of State Treasurer, and obviously there's lots of room for improvement. But behind a person's spiritual relationship, their relationship with their family, and their relationship with their personal health, the state for these people, their pension and their health care are the two other most important things in their life. And we take that responsibility very seriously.
You've had a chance now, granted, albeit a relatively short one, an immersion by fire. Mm-hmm. You've had a chance to really delve into and look at these retirement plans. Any significant changes that you would like to make recommend to the legislature that need to be made?
Well, we're going to do a lot of things in-house, which number one, we're going to do an enrollment audit. Anytime that you're almost $50 billion underfunded in health care and pension, the first thing you have a responsibility for is to make sure that people aren't getting pension checks that don't deserve them. People aren't getting health care benefits that don't deserve them. And providers of health care aren't getting paid for health care benefits that don't deserve them. We applied that same strategy at DES very successfully, and we expect to do that at the State Treasurer's office also. It's called an enrollment audit.
There's been a lot of discussion in recent years about the type of retirement system that we have. We have what's called a defined benefit plan, and there are many people who are saying that we need to draw a line in the sand for the people who are already in it, and new employees need to come in on what's called a defined contribution plan, in which they get to make their contributions, the state makes contributions, and they have their own account and can determine how they're invested, and therefore whatever pot is there when they retire, that's the benefit they get. Defined benefit, defined contribution, where do you stand on that?
Well, I applied for this job telling the people of North Carolina that I was going to preserve and strengthen the defined benefit plan. But we do have people, especially those at the UNC system, who have the choice of using the defined contribution plan. In addition to that, you may not know, as big as the state pension plan is, it's one of the largest pools of public capital in the entire world. We are the largest supplemental retirement system in the world. We have more participants in the 401k, 403b, and the 457 plans. And those are defined contribution plans that employees can supplement their savings with.
So this is a both and kind of.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So when we get into that question in particular, you just mentioned that we have one of the largest sovereign wealth funds, or however you want to think about it. We're one of the largest investors. In the past, our state treasurer, other state treasurers, recognizing or having been recognized of that fact, have thought it to be appropriate to get involved in issues of corporate governance, to use their institutional heft as an investor to try to seek changes in corporate America or corporations around the world, perhaps even pursue certain causes related to what corporations do. Is that something that you anticipate spending time on?
I'm spending my energy on my fiduciary responsibility to be loyal to the participants of the plan and the taxpayers of North Carolina. If some of those issues come up and can coexist with what I just said, then I'm all for that. But I'm not spending energy on those issues per se.
A lot of people don't realize that not all state employees are treated equally. There's judicial retirement, there's legislative retirement, there's rank and file state employee
State
retirement.
Highway Patrol.
Is that a good idea to have different retirement systems for members of the General Assembly or judges and rank and file state employees, many of whom have worked 30 or 40 years?
It's very confusing, and actually the benefits and how a person can retire and how they can roll sick leave and comp time and all those other issues into that is very confusing. But the most confusing thing that exists is that a lot of our state employees, those that have been working for the state 25 and 30 years, if you were to ask them the money that comes out of their check every month, the 6% to go toward their defined benefit plan, if you were to ask them if that's matched by the state of North Carolina, a huge percentage of them would say no. And the reason is that we've done a horrible job of explaining to the people of North Carolina through an employee benefit statement, which we do not have one. We've done a horrible job of explaining what the true value of these defined benefit plans and the defined contribution and the health care plan. We've done a horrible job of explaining the benefit of that and the value of that. And we're going to design an employee benefit statement, because you cannot be in a relationship with any stakeholder where you never get credit for what you do for someone, but you always get blamed for what you
don't do.
But is it appropriate to have different levels, I guess is my question. As state treasurer, is it a good idea if somebody works 30 years in North Carolina state government and has a lower retirement formula than a member of the General Assembly or a judge?
No.
but that doesn't fall under your scope of authority. That is a legislative.
You can advocate, though.
That is a legislative.
You can advocate that. Question that doesn't fall under your scope but is relevant, which has to do with the vesting period, the period during which employees would have to work in order to enter into the pension system.
Yes.
Should we change that vesting period, given the fact that we have this unfunded liability?
Well, the vesting period for the health plan and the pension was 5 years. And when I came in the General Assembly in 2005, I got the vesting period on the health plan changed to 20.
Scaled up.
And then later, I got the vesting period for the pension plan changed from 5 to 10. And then a year and a half or 2 years ago, the General Assembly rolled that back to 5 years. So it's as if the law that I passed to take it to 10 never existed, because it is within the 5-year period.
All right, we got to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk about this and the state health plan. Stay with us.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The healthcare landscape is filled with questions and uncertainties of changes that are coming. In these times of change, there's one thing you can trust. You can trust your family physician to work for you, not only in treating sickness and disease, but also your overall health. Regardless of how healthcare might change, the men and women of the North Carolina Academy of Family Physicians pledge to work upholding your trust. Family physicians, your trusted healthcare advisors.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, "Come on, we're leaving."
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We continue a very interesting discussion with State Treasurer Dale Folwell. Dale, for many years, the legislature itself managed the state health plan, but in 2012, it transferred the administration to the State Treasurer's office. We've heard varying numbers, but there's widespread agreement. We've made health care promises to employees we're not able to fill. What's your assessment as to size of the unfunded mandate in the state health plan?
Well, my assessment comes from the actuaries for the state of North Carolina, who most recently said that our unfunded liability for the state health plan is over $32 billion and growing. And the reason is unlike the pension plan, where money every year and every month was being put aside by the employers and whoever they work for in state government, these eligibility for the state health plan, that existed all during that worker's career, but no money has ever been set aside for that benefit.
Well, you've made some recommendations as to how we can close that gap of $32 billion. Tell us what they are.
Well, I'm also the chair of the debt affordability study, and one thing that we want to do is that, since I'm also in charge of issuing bonds for the state, that anytime that we can issue bonds on behalf of the state at a lower interest rate, we want that money to go into the solvency, the post-healthcare solvency fund to start paying for these pension and healthcare liabilities of state employees. In addition to that, we want to obviously keep working on waste and fraud in the state health plan. I think that there's fantastic opportunities to save money.
But you'll agree that's kind of chump change insofar as $32 billion is concerned.
Well, actually, you know, if you focus on the pennies and the paper clips, which is how we got in this situation, is not focusing on pennies and paper clips, you can make I think, a long-term difference.
Here's the thing. State employees are saying, hey, look, we weren't the ones who created that $32 billion unfunded liability. The legislature, for whatever the reason, decided this is going to be the case. We also shouldn't be the ones who have this debt paid back on our backs. We shouldn't have to be the ones pay. Do you agree or disagree with that philosophy?
I agree that I consider the state pension plan, the state health plan to be like the Museum of Art, and there's a fire. And that all the stakeholders have to look at this and ask themselves, now, if we throw water on that, are we going to ruin these paintings? That's not the question. The question is, how are we going to work together to preserve and strengthen the state health plan? What's happening with the state health plan is that we've been constantly told that we lose money on families who join the state health plan. As a matter of fact, less than 4% of all the 700,000 people on the state health plan have family coverage. You know why? Because many of the people who are protecting us from capital murderers, or who are paving our roads, or are educating our children, especially those beginning families, they're having to work 5 days out of the work month this year to pay the family premium.
Yeah.
So we're driving young, healthy people off the state health plan. You cannot have an insurance company like that.
All right, more on the health plan after these messages.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you. North Carolina is a great state with great assets.
Among them are 180,000 state employees.
Our legislators are considering important decisions regarding working conditions,
Health insurance,
retirement benefits,
and pay for state employees.
Scenic is the one voice at the table when those decisions are being considered.
Scenic is revitalized and refocused.
A stronger Scenic ensures a more effective voice.
Learn more at www.scenic.org.
Wow, this half hour has passed fast. Dale, thank you for being on, and we hope you've enjoyed this special update on the State Treasurer's Office. We thank Treasurer Dale Folwell for making himself available to talk with us. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read my weekly column, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And next week, we return to our regular format and more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.